Greetings, campers, and welcome to our webinar, the latest in our series of TELUS webinars. This is part 2 of our social media webinar. My name is Scott Walker. I'm the Executive Director of CSARN, and like most of you, I am also an elder artist. I welcome artists from across Canada today, and I would like to point out at this point that we live and create on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations who have cared for this land, now called Canada, since time immemorial. We acknowledge this, of course, as part of our covenant with Indigenous nations to share, care for, and protect this land in a spirit of peace and friendship, and to honor the future generations of all our nations. 2 weeks ago, we held a webinar on social media for beginners. Now that you're experts, we're going to take the notch up just a little bit. How do you make the most of your social media accounts? I mean, there are only so many images of cats and videos of cats and what you had for lunch and politicians dancing on TikTok, although all those, of course, are important. But there are other ways to make the most of social media as an artist. Let's find out what they are. I'd like to introduce once again our presenter for the day. He saw the importance of social media 14 years ago, somewhat visionary at that point. Since then, he's advised major corporations on how to manage social media. He teaches it at Humber College in Toronto, and today he will be our instructor. Please welcome Boyd Neal. Boyd, take it away.
Thank you. Let me share the screen. I'm pleased you didn't refer to me as an expert, which you did in the description of this series, because I actually had a young person speak to my class yesterday who's the vice president and group director of social media at Click Healthcare, an advertising agency, and she's been in the business 10 years in the social media business, and I was in awe of her knowledge of social. She just she understood social media both in terms of its specific functionality of any platform, but also its strategy, how you use it to, and how you work with people like Khloe Kardashian, for example, which she's currently worked with. I'm assuming everybody knows who the Kardashians are. And, while I have no interest at all in working with Khloe Kardashian, I was fascinated by how you build a relationship with somebody to have them create your content for you on Instagram and other platforms. So expert may be the wrong word, but I've paid attention to it and used it for a long time.
So I would say expert is a relative term, Boyd, and compared to the rest of us, I would say you have some expertise.
Maybe so. Maybe I should call myself an elder expert.
So, that's a good one.
Anyway, I'm going to share my screen and get started. I have a fair number of slides. I wanted to say before I begin that one person asked a question last week, which I couldn't answer, which was about ownership of intellectual property on Instagram. And I wanted to just read quickly a sentence from Instagram's own policies around this, which says, simply put, Instagram does not copyright your photos when you post them. You retain 100% ownership of them. According to Instagram's terms of use, Instagram does not claim ownership of any content that you post on or through the service. So you don't surrender any intellectual property rights when you post any content at all on Instagram. So I get that out of the way because it was a question that I didn't know the answer to. I thought this was the answer, but I wanted to be sure that I confirmed it by reviewing their policies. So now I will share my screen, if that's okay, and get started.
Absolutely.
This is it. And is that in presentation mode? Are we okay?
It is, yep.
It is. So I'll get started. As we said earlier, I think in the earlier session, Scott made the point that if anyone has any questions, he will be monitoring the chat. and I'm happy to answer them as we go along or at the end to the extent that I can. If not, I'll wait for Social Media 301, which might happen in the spring when you realize that you are now thoroughly advanced in this and you want to know how to dance on TikTok. So what I'm going to do today is that I want to just review a couple of slides from last week about considerations when you're thinking of using social media. I want to talk a little about a couple of alternatives to Twitter, since some people are questioning whether or not they want to continue to use Twitter, given the takeover by Elon Musk and the belief that he's going to turn the platform into something that people don't necessarily want to be on, given the restrictions he might be lifting with respect to misinformation and hate content. I'm also going to talk about two other platforms that we didn't talk about last week, Pinterest, or 2 weeks ago, Pinterest and YouTube, just a little bit. And I purposefully didn't address them in the first session since there was a lot to cover. But I'd like to just make a few comments about Pinterest and YouTube now. I'm going to talk a little bit about blogging and newsletters, because blogging is not dead. Blogging is still a place that people can build a reputation on social and use their social platforms to amplify their content if it's developed on a blog platform or a newsletter platform, and I'll give some examples. And then I want to talk in considerable detail about social media advertising, how you can, if you set yourself up on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, Twitter, or any social platform, you can create a larger following for your content with minimal expenditure or a small expenditure on any one of the platforms. And it might be worth considering doing so if you are starting to build a presence on a social platform, but would like to find non-organic ways to expand the number of people who see your content and follow you. And the way to do that is through minimal advertising. So that's how I'd like to look at the time I'm going to spend with you now. And I hope that that meets your needs. Again, I'm happy to answer questions that are posed in the chat that Scott will monitor. Okay, so just a reminder with respect to some of the considerations. First of all, I think it's always important to remember that it's not mandatory to being successful as a senior or elder artist to be on social. If you don't like it, if you don't feel comfortable there, feel that it's more the playground of Gen Z and millennial people, and you don't really care whether you reach them, no big deal. There are other ways to ensure that people see content that you create as an artist, whatever that form is. It is a good way, as I said last week, to build and sustain a network of connections, if that's what you need. But the value that you draw from it depends on a number of factors. And these sometimes are the kind of factors that limit people's ability to take full advantage of social media. And they are the time that's needed to be active on social. So, for example, for a client that I currently work on, and I don't work on many clients, I check Twitter every day for them using a platform called TweetDeck to see if there are any references to them that they need to address. This is a regulatory body. And it takes time. I may only spend 6 or 7 minutes each morning and at the end of the day checking to see whether or not there have been negative references about them on the Twitter in particular, Nevertheless, it's time, and I have to find the time to check it out. It requires thought. You have to define how you intend to use the platform. You have to, any one of the platforms, you have to define what kind of content that you're going to produce, how you're going to achieve a regular distribution of content, because if you don't regularly distribute content, people may say, okay, it's not worth coming back to this site because, I see that they haven't posted in 3 weeks. So, it's not giving me the kind of immediacy that I might need. You have to be prepared for engagement, reciprocal engagement. By that, I mean that you have to be willing to comment. You have to be willing to address when people say things about your work that you are posting about. Otherwise, if you don't engage, then again, people's patience diminishes. Then you have to have the ability to sustain it over a period of time. And I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to blogging, and in particular, how I used blogging and how I address the issue of being able to sustain. Primarily, though, you've got to define the purpose. Why is it that you want to bother with learning about the social platforms? Why is it that you are considering creating a presence on these platforms? Is it to cultivate the conversation about whatever your art is? Is it to get more work if you're still looking to make a sale, to find a commission, to be engaged as a consultant? Could it be that it's personal fulfillment? You've had a rich life and you'd like to share that life. Rich artistic life, and you'd like to share that life. Is it that you want to create a historical record of some of the work that you've done so that it is there for posterity? And, perhaps if you're a visual artist, it's, people will say, gee, we should get some of those pieces of art for our gallery, perhaps. It may be that you want to reinforce your reputation, or you may want to promote a performance that if you are still an active artist, say a dance performer or an actor. But one way or another, you have to define why it is that you want to be there. Simply thinking I got to be there because everybody's there is insufficient to ensure that you can sustain the kind of investment of time and thought that is required to be effective. If you can't be effective on social media, then why bother? You can organize good dinner parties and have your friends over. So, should you bother is a critical question. And, while I pay a great deal of attention to social media, I recognize that defining purpose of being there is important for every individual. So I made those points last week, but I wanted to stress them again, because the idea of this, in particular, the time, the thought, the engagement, the ability to sustain are going to come up as we go along. So one of the questions that we had last week was, or 2 weeks ago, I keep saying last week, I apologize, was, are there Twitter alternatives? If people are disturbed by the direction that Twitter is taking, I'm personally not disturbed. I feel that the fact that Trump has announced a plan to attempt to get reelected means that Trump will, and Elon Musk is going to let Trump back onto Twitter, is disturbing and unpleasant. But I've selected the people that I follow to provide me with information that I'm interested in, and I can ignore the Trumps and the DeSantises of the world. Nevertheless, there are alternatives that you may have heard that have popped up recently. These platforms have been around for a while, but they're gaining some momentum as people express their disgust at what's happening at Twitter and want to move somewhere else. So one of them is called Mastodon. And that's the most common one. You may have seen reference to it if you read the New York Times, for example. It's a decentralized free social network. It's built on open source software, which means that it's not owned by anybody. And it functions like Twitter, except I quite like the instead of tweets, which I've always thought was rather weird, they call them toots, which is not necessarily any better. You can follow people and organizations who have a presence on Mastodon, and you can do things like favorite, which is like a like on other platforms, or boost, that is, you can boost a post like a retweet on Twitter. So I don't have a presence on Mastodon. I haven't investigated it. As I've said, I'm satisfied that Twitter, that I can sufficiently narrow the type of people I follow and the type of information I get posted or pushed at me. So I'm going to stay there. But Mastodon is something that, a platform that has been drawing a lot of people's attention. And I know quite a number of people who are moving their Twitter presence to Mastodon. Another one that has been around for quite some time that I think is of interest is Discord. Discord is as it says, it's a voice, video, and text communication service where you can hang out and talk to people. As it says, its goal is to build a genuine relationship with friends and communities. But the idea is that you can build communities in Discord around particular topics that interest you, and then you can bring friends and communities together on Discord in a way that perhaps allows you to control your presence on social media, but expand the number of people who you connect with on social. They don't have to be friends that you've made in real life, IRL, in real life is an expression, obviously. Social is real life, but what I mean by is in person. There are 150 million active users on Discord, which means it pales in comparison in terms of size of monthly active users to something like TikTok, which has 1 billion. But nevertheless, it's an interesting platform to explore. Yesterday, Toronto Fringe Festival, which I'm also on the board of, announced that they've created a Discord community called Toronto Indie Arts Worker Network. And I've created a link here so that you can go and join it when the PowerPoint is made available to everybody, if you're interested. But it was created by an intern at Toronto Fringe, and they've launched it now, and they're going to work on building a network, a community of independent arts workers, as they call them. And you might want to explore it to see whether or not this is something that interests you specifically, or you might want to explore it to see how these networks are built. Anyone can build such a community and network on Discord. So maybe that's the direction your social presence should take. So I wanted to comment on those two platforms because they are alternative ways to build communities that people may find of value if they are not interested in the major platforms like Instagram, TikTok, etc. Okay, so next I want to talk about Pinterest. And Pinterest obviously is of value to people who are visual artists. And I have a Pinterest presence and have had for a number of years, but I don't do anything with it. I use it as a place to store infographics that I think might be useful in my teaching, infographics about social media or about the various platforms. So I don't use it very much at all, but it has surprisingly and surprising to many people who use social media or build social media strategies for organizations and nonprofits, they have a tendency to ignore Pinterest, yet it's huge. And it is important, as I've said, in terms of visual content, because it is a place that people store and explore visual ideas. It may be fashion, but it may also be art. It may be products that they're interested in. It may be recipes or whatever, but it tends to focus on visual discovery. You can, find, create, and save what are called pins to boards. You create boards. I have a number of boards on my site. I'm not going to give you its address, by the way, because it's useless, really, for others. It's just not something I pay attention to anymore. But you create a number of boards, then you pin things, images that you see that you like. Other people, the key thing here is these pins are searchable, which means that if, for example, you're a visual artist and you're posting images of your process, for example, or your finished product, and you post it on a board on Pinterest, then those pins, in fact, are searchable. So other people can discover them without you having to push them to the content on your boards. And one of the key things here is, if you do have a website, is you can, if you have a business account, and that doesn't mean that you pay any money, but you've set it up as a business rather than a personal account, it allows you to do a number of things. It also gives you access to analytics about what's happening on your platform. But you can also create links back to your website on the site. So if somebody sees something that they like, that you've posted, then they can click on your pin and be directed to your website. I've put in, again, some information, some links to sites that will give you more useful information on how to take best advantage of it, how to set yourself up on Pinterest in such a way that you can build a following, create pins that are searchable, and if this is what you're looking to do, use social media to sell things, then Hootsuite, for example, the link I've provided tells you how to use and set up Pinterest for shopping purposes. In terms of what makes for successful pins, I think it's interesting to take a look at this quickly. This is Peg Fitzpatrick, who has created some really useful information about how to use Pinterest in particular to be successful. And I've linked to her site in the PowerPoint. So what makes for successful pins on Pinterest? Anything that shows people how to do something. Process. People like to see how a chef makes something, or how an artist creates something, or how a person may use, dance, for example, how someone creates a dance performance, or how they prepare for a dance performance. So the idea of showing how something comes about is central to what makes for successful presence on Pinterest. Of course, you create your own pins for Pinterest. I didn't, for example, create any pins. I would post, I'd see an image of an infographic or something that I liked, or a quote, and I would do a screenshot of it and then post it on one of my boards on Pinterest. But you can create original pins. You can create content on Pinterest itself and not just clip something that you see or like. This is very specific. The quality of the images on Pinterest makes a difference to how successful you can be in getting people to search for your pins, or to, once they find them, build a build a connection with you. And this is a very specific description of the kind of pixel format that effective content on Pinterest needs to be. Other than learning how to do something, people come to Pinterest for inspiration and ideas. Many people use Pinterest, for example, if they are thinking of doing a kitchen renovation and they see images of various kitchens that they like, or people are looking to decide what they should be buying for Hanukkah or Christmas presents, and people will capture images of things that they see that they think might be a perfect gift for somebody. They come for ideas. They come to look at the collection of things that they have pinned or created, and they take a look at them again to see if there's something that inspires them to buy something, for example. It's important, if you're building a presence, and this is true of any of the social media platforms, it's important that if you establish a brand or a description of yourself personally, that you don't stray from that brand on that platform. So, for example, if you build a presence on Pinterest that's related to your process for creating art, for example, it isn't the place that you should then use to denounce the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Do that on Twitter, or do that in Mastodon. So when you create a particular type of presence on a social media platform, you have to stay on brand. People who follow you on Pinterest to see your ideas about the process of creating art don't want to hear what your political views are. And that's really important, because many people use social platforms as a place to express their opinion. That's fine, but choose a platform to be the place that you express your political views, and choose another platform where you want to explore your art, for example. And then finally, this is a point that's true of any social media platform, and used to be much more important 10 years ago, 15 years ago, is that designers would often forget that people are viewing their content on mobile devices. Websites would be created 15 years ago that looked perfectly lovely on a desktop computer, but were a mess when it came to be viewed on mobile. As this said, 80% of pinners are on mobile devices. I would say that 80% of people who are active on social media are active on their mobile devices, as opposed to a desktop or an iPad, for example. So that's important to keep in mind when you're creating content for any platform, but especially for Pinterest, that it's going to be viewed on a very small screen. And then finally, and again, this is true of any social platform, is build a community. Build your community by engaging and interacting with people. And you create that community. That means that you have friends on these platforms who are interested in your content and will want to see you continue to post that content, and will want to react to it and create engagement with you. So those are some of the ideas of how to use Pinterest. I'm noticing that there are some chat questions and Q&A questions. Is now an appropriate time, Scott, to address some of those, or would you like me just to keep rolling?
Why don't we get into them now, Boyd, okay. Since you asked. We had a question about TikTok's harvesting of information from your phone. Is that something to worry about?
it is something to pay attention to. Yes, their algorithm, you'll be surprised if you open a TikTok account and you click on, one video, you'll be surprised at how quickly you are suddenly in the For You area on TikTok will suddenly find that you are being inundated with similar type of content. Their algorithm is very powerful in determining what it is that you are seeing, and you have to be very careful. And by that, I mean, for example, if you when I initially went on TikTok, and I don't post on TikTok, I happen to click on one image of a lion and a hyena fighting. And I happened to click on it because I wasn't sensitive enough to the impact of the algorithm. Now, when I go to my For You, and I haven't yet posted anything and liked anything since, I constantly am being given images of or videos of African animals eating each other. And, I frankly, the only way I can figure out how to stop that is by actually going to other types of videos that I'm truly interested in. You also have to be careful on TikTok because, in particular, with men, they begin to offer you TikToks of women exposing themselves, not in a sexual way, not exposing fully because you're not allowed to. You have to subscribe to somebody, but they push this at you initially as a man. If you don't react to it by clicking on any of these images, then they steadily replace it with other stuff. But going in, they seem to make an assumption that men will like to see images of young women, in sexual poses, if you like. You're not allowed to use the word sex on TikTok. So people get around it, for example, by spelling it SEGS, S-E-G-G-S. But of course, TikTok people know what they're referring to, or, it doesn't take it long to realize that that's what you're referring to. So yes, you have to be careful. The other aspect to the question, I hope this is not too long-winded, is TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese-based company. There are concerns that it is mining the data that's collected on TikTok for other purposes, political purposes. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's simply an extension of our, concern about China and India and Russia, slightly smacking of racism. I don't know. But I do know that TikTok is owned by a Chinese company, and that given the way their algorithm works, it's quite likely that they get access to data and information about you that may serve a purpose in the future that we don't know.
Thank you.
I promise not all my answers will be as long-winded as that. It is an interesting question. So
it was indeed. Well, let's put your assurance to the test here. I have another question. Yes. Should one create an account on the main social media platforms just to protect your brand or name from being used by others? Presumably, even if you're not going to be terribly active at this point.
I think, you can, but people will find a way around it. So for example, when I first started TikTok, I wanted to create a group to test groups out. So I created Boyd's Ministry of Truth. And I still have Boyd's Ministry of Truth. But I can assure you that I can't claim to know the truth. But also other people have created very similar names, and people will find a way around it. So I guess I'm saying I'm not sure it's worth the bother, but there's no harm in doing it. That was
Fair
briefer.
enough. Fair enough. I'll let you get back to it,
Oh, you want me to continue?
unless you want to quit
Or-
now.
No, go ahead. Ask
No,
any other
we're
questions.
good with the questions.
Okay. So I wanted to comment briefly on YouTube because it was something that I didn't address in the first session. And YouTube is still a place that is, while TikTok in particular has taken some of the steam out of YouTube, there are still lots of opportunities on YouTube for people. I mean, one of the limits in TikTok is the limit on the amount of time you can actually have a video last, which is, I believe, 3 minutes. It used to be a matter of seconds, but I think you can now create videos and post them on TikTok that are as long as 3 minutes. Obviously, 3 minutes, you can do a lot in 3 minutes, but if you have more to say or more to show, YouTube is still a place to create a presence. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of discussion about YouTube. If there are questions, obviously I'll answer, but what you need to do on YouTube is something similar to what I said earlier about creating a brand. You need to establish a particular voice on YouTube. And, you know, for example, dance tutorials and dance workouts by Fit Lara Dance, who has 114,000 subscribers. Clearly, it's evident when you look at her YouTube channel that you'll know what you're going to see when you look at her videos. You know that there is an opportunity to pay her to get access to videos that aren't available to the public, for example. So you need to establish a very particular voice, and it's fairly easy to set up a YouTube channel. I didn't go into it, but there's again a link here to how to link, so that you could, if you're interested in pursuing this, you can take a look at YouTube for Creators, the how-to, and it'll give you much more information about how to go about setting up a channel. But you need to, if you do go this route, you need to customize your channel branding so that it has a name, but it also is attractive, that it identifies your voice, it captures your voice clearly. You can create an icon banner like this, and they're not very complex to create. They'll help you do it. You need to have a profile picture that demonstrates clearly who you are. And it's better to have a photo of yourself as opposed to you know, some kind of image of you, you know, a comic image or whatever, because people like to see people. And you might even have to think of creating a trailer that is just like a film trailer, something that captures what people can expect if they subscribe to your channel. And by subscribe, I only mean that you're pushed content when they you're told when or notified, that's the word I was looking for, notified when new content is available. Or it could mean, if you decide to charge for your content, that subscribe means that you actually are agreeing to pay some kind of fee to see the content. To be successful, you need to set up a production plan. If you want to look at an effective use of YouTube, Carolyn Evans Hammond, who's the Toronto Star wine critic, has a channel called Wine Talks. You can see the progression of her YouTube site, also her Instagram account, as she became more professional in the way in which she used the channel to do her interviews of wine owners or to give reviews of various products, in addition to what she does in the Toronto Star. It's called Wine Talks, and it's worth looking at. Carolyn Evan Hammonds and I worked together 20 years ago, when she was just a media relations person, but she became a wine critic and is doing an excellent job on social media of building a following for her reviews and her interviews outside of what she does in the Toronto Star. she's only a freelancer for the Toronto Star. They didn't hire her as a full-time wine critic. So she has a production plan. You can tell that she's invested in learning about camera angles and lighting and microphones and how you dress. I mean, she dresses very business-like, and not the jeans and sweatshirt type image that she might project on another platform. So she's made all those decisions, and she's been successful in building a strong following. I think she's got, I can check, but about 13,000 followers for her wine channel. And then finally, no YouTube rules. There are certain rules about the kind of content you can post. And you need to, in the same way that question was asked about Instagram, you need to reassure yourself that YouTube does not own your content. You own it. But that link, YouTube for Creators, is useful to provide more detailed background information. Just to say, by the way, just a terminology comment. Creators is the preferred language today for people who use social platforms for a purpose other than just connecting with friends, who create original content for social media platforms. They used to be called influencers, but that implied that their content actually had an impact. Now, influencers prefer to call themselves creators. And in fact, creators aren't necessarily influential. They are people who simply create content for social platforms because they enjoy it. Of course, many of them hope to be well-paid influencers, but in terms of self-definition and in terms of the way the people who pay attention to social media refer to them, they're creators now. Okay, so that's YouTube. That's all I'm going to say about YouTube. I wouldn't dismiss it. It depends on what field you're in, but I wouldn't dismiss it. It can still be a strong social platform for building reputation and for growing a community of people who follow you, and perhaps if you're selling products, selling. Okay, taking a breath here, I want to go on to talk a bit about blogging. And I stress that it's still very much a thing. There was some belief that platforms like Twitter or Instagram would suck the energy out of people who created blogs. That's not quite the case. Blogs are still, as I say, very much a thing, and they are something that people should consider who like the ability to use more space to share what they create. So I just want to take a look quickly at personal blogs, and also a development in personal blogs that has made a difference in particular to journalists or opinion writers. So there are still many platforms, blog and newsletter platforms, and I'll talk a little bit about newsletter platforms in particular. For example, that image to the right or left, whatever it is, a word or two, that's a Tumblr site. Tumblr still exists. To people who were involved in social media 10 years ago, many of them created Tumblr blogs. It was considered a short form blog. It's easy to set up. It's easy to post things to it. I created one because I was so active on social in a business sense that I wanted to create something that reflected my love of reading. And so I created a site called A Word or Two, in which I simply posted phrases, as I said, ideas and phrases that are so wonderfully expressed that I wanted to say them out loud to others. I said, this is out loud on this Tumblr site. Tumblr site still exists because you don't pay for it. But Tumblr became more of a site for visual artists, for cartoonists, for example. And again, I haven't invested much time in it for the last couple of years, in part because I created a blog for another purpose. All of the platforms on the left, Wix, HubSpot, WordPress.com, Blogger, Tumblr, Substack, Medium, Squarespace, and Ghost, for example, are all platforms that you can use to create a blog. And, if you do feel you have a need for more space to expand what you would like to talk about or show, a blog might be a way to go. Many of them help you set it up. For example, Squarespace, which is the platform I used up until a year ago, I paid $140 a year to have a blog that's hosted on Squarespace, and they have all kinds of templates for blog designs. So you don't even have to design the site. If you go to Squarespace, you can simply adapt one of their template designs, and they have dozens and dozens and dozens of them, which you can use as a base, and then tweak them as you like. And I'll show you an example from my own blog. But I wanted to talk, and the reason I've circled Substack. Substack is in the last couple of years, has become something that many writers in particular have created Substack newsletters. Journalists have built a presence on Substack, in part because they can charge for it. You can search Substack for any kind of topic and see if somebody's writing about it. If you like what they're writing and they have a model in which you have to pay to see their other content, then you can do so. So, when you go to the search, for example, search Substack, you get a list. For example, I searched, culture. I can't remember exactly the search term. And what I was shown was a list of criteria here that could help me refine what it was I was looking for. And when you click on it, you get offered a list of top publications that are based on the topic you've selected. So I selected arts and illustration, and here are some examples of people who are creating content on Substack for free, as far as I know. I didn't dive into any one of these, but for example, the No Such Thing as Too Much Art Society is a site or a newsletter created by Daniel Kreisa, the founder of the Jealous Curator. And on her newsletter, you can find all kinds of art with her descriptions of it, process descriptions, that kind of thing. Or The Long Road Diary by Vicente Fraga, a newsletter about my photographic process. So people are creating thousands of newsletters on Substack or Medium, which I'm not going to address in particular because it's very similar to Substack. And it is, if you are interested in creating a newsletter and regularly contributing to it, then this might be a platform to look at. Again, it doesn't cost anything to create a presence on Substack, but it is going to require that you make a commitment to regularly contributing to content. One of my former colleagues sends out a newsletter every week, on Friday sends out, because you can either subscribe to the Substack, or you can subscribe to an email list that notifies you of the Substack and sends you its content. He does it every Friday, and it's simply a curated list of articles about communications, public relations, research-based findings about the way in which reputation is built, or crisis communications. And so he's created a Substack presence. Again, it's unnecessary to pay to see his stuff, and he does a newsletter as well, or sends it out as a newsletter link in an email. There are still, sorry, there'll be one more that I want to show you that's interesting, but there are still pure blogs, and that's what mine was, a pure blog. As you see, I suspended it March 17th, a year ago. And what I did with this blog, and this is on a Squarespace, one of their Squarespace models, I created, using their template, that Boyd Neal logo. They make it easy to drop in images, that kind of thing. And mine was a weekly annotated curation of significant social media platform developments from the previous week with links and what I called carping marginalia as needed, posted every Monday morning or thereabouts. So I would post every Monday morning, even on holidays, because again, sustaining the content is critical. I would change the image, every month or so. That had, in case you missed it, it nearly always had a coffee theme, because I love coffee. This is based on a Squarespace platform. It was a small reach. At most I had maybe 500 or 600 people who subscribed to it, or came to visit my site. They give you that analytics. They give you access to all kinds of analytics to see where people are coming from, what platform, what device they're using, that kind of thing, for $140 a year. But a lot of energy on my part. But it was a pure blog, in the same way that my friend Brendan's was a pure blog. Blogs can be very esoteric, and this is a blog that I pay attention to because I enjoy it. It's called The Culture Tutor. So he creates a blog in which every Friday he does an analysis of a piece of art or music or performance that has a history, that is historical. And it's fascinating, things and artists and compositions that I've never heard of. Not to say that I'm a particularly cultured individual, but it's a fascinating, but very esoteric, with a very narrow audience base. And he simply creates it because he wants people to be aware of architecture they may not have noticed before, a piece of art in a gallery that you've never seen or knew was there. And he sends it out as a newsletter as well. So he creates both the blog and sends it out as a new newsletter, and it comes to my inbox every Friday, and I can either read the content in email, or I can go to the website and view it in a much more easily consumable way. But this is an example. He does classical music, and there's each week it's a different combination of content. So it'll be classical music, then there'll be a piece on architecture, a piece on art, etc. And for example, this is Peter Lange-Muller's 1900 piece Viking Blood Overture. I don't know how many of you know that, but I don't know it. I only show it to demonstrate that you can create a wonderful presence around the most esoteric things and get people like me to subscribe simply because the content is fascinating. So that's a blog as well. So if you do decide to go this route, what do you need to do? This is from Eric Qualman, who's a writer on social media. And basically he said, you've got to be committed to writing. And as I said, I posted once a week for 2 years on a Monday morning, the content that I had curated over the previous week. It has to be regular. People could expect it on Monday morning. Yeah, I was targeting a very small audience, so I didn't expect to get 10,000 people reading it. I was targeting people who were involved in the business of social media or were interested in, from a business perspective, how social media platforms were changing. You have to be timely in order to be effective, except if you're going the route of the culture tutor, where timely in his case is over the previous 3,000-4,000 years. The posts have to be findable. So it isn't a case when you create a blog of if you build it, they will come. You have to drive people to the blog. And that means you're still going to be using social media like Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, Instagram, in order to tell people that you have a blog and what the content is. And by tell people, I don't mean that you say, hi, go to my blog. It means that you post something on Twitter, for example, that says something interesting and, sort of, if you want to know more, click here. It has to be shareable. That means that you have to have the social media widgets, that is Facebook or Twitter or Instagram widgets on the home page, as I did, back there on the upper right is the social media widgets. That is, it allows people to share your content. It has to be searchable. You have to be conscious of, for example, if you are, in my case, writing about social media, I had to ensure that any of the platform names were in the copy that I was creating and repeated, not in, I hope, a vulgar way, but in a way that meant that search engine like Google can find the content. It has to be mobile friendly, as I said earlier. Most of those platforms that I showed you, like Wix and Squarespace, etc., their platforms adjust their content or the form of the blog or to suit the platform it's on. And you also have to think of whether or not you want to add contributors, something I never did, but many blogs do. That is, allow other people who've approached you to create content on your site. So that's successful blogging. In terms of the content of the blog, and this I decided to include because it doesn't matter whether it's a blog or any social media content. To be effective, you need to keep these things in mind. So you need to be authentic, speaking passionately about whatever the subject is. People have a choice, millions of choices about what they're going to read and consume. You have to create a sense that you are passionate about a subject and express strong opinions about it. And then people will decide if they like those opinions and want to keep hearing them. Links are important. Visuals, people retain far more information, for example, if it's provided in a visual way, if it's an audio or it's a podcast, a photo or whatever, video clips, etc. Use those links in your blog or in any other social media. Keywords, think SEO stands for search engine optimization. As you know, 90% of the world searches for things on Google, and Google, as you possibly have realized, there is the home page, what's called the SERP, the search engine results page, which is the pages of references to whatever it is that you've searched. In order for you to appear in the first search engine results page, you need to choose words that, for your content, that are the same words that people might use to search. you or your content. And you put those words in a dominant place in your content. You find a way to weave them in. That's what optimizing for search engines is. That just means that you're going to be found. The thing that's happened, just as a side comment here, is that you'll notice if you search anything on Google now, Google ads appear as the first results. It used to be that it was only one or two. So the top results would be, ads in the first two places. Now, often 50% of that first page are ads, which means two things. You've got to, if you want your content to be found, you have to really load it with keywords, or you have to advertise in order to boost its place on the search engine results page rather. You have to interact with people. If anyone makes a comment on your blog or social media content, you've got to react to it. You have to be timely about current issues, because that's when people begin to search for opinions. So, if there is a controversy happening about, for example, I noticed that the Guggenheim in New York, there's an article in the Atlantic about the former head curator at the Guggenheim who's gotten into trouble. I won't express my view of it, but that's a current issue. And if you're writing about art in large museums, that is top of mind for many people, and therefore consider writing about it. You need to, get inspired in some way. You can, in my case, I built a whole blog on curating others' content, finding what other people are writing about or posting about and commenting on it. And then finally, you use visuals, perhaps infographics, if you are able to create them. So that's successful blog content. I'll take a breather, not me, but to see if there are any other questions I could answer at this point, because then I want to dive into, in the last little bit of time, social media advertising.
Excellent timing.
To expand. Yes,
excellent timing, because I was just about to jump in and say, before we leave blogging, we do have a couple of questions, and one of them is more generic to all platforms, but they're related. Can one use a page of one's website as a blog? And part two of that from another participant is, what is the strength and weakness of using your website to hold your content, be it musical or video, interviews, reviews, whatever, as opposed to one of the social media platforms? Is it better to use a platform to drive viewers to your website?
Well, to answer the second question first, yes, it's better to use other platforms to drive people. The only way people will find a website is if you tell them, or it's optimized for the way in which people search for the topic that you're on. Otherwise, people won't know it's there. As I said, I can't remember which slide it was. If I could just click back. Keywords, current inspiration there. Findable. You have to make your content findable. And what posting on assets like Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn do is they shout to the social media world, hey, I've got some stuff here you might be interested in. And the reason that you use social in that way is because the algorithms are all, I talked about the TikTok algorithm, but all of the platforms use algorithms to decide what content to present to you. So if that means that you increase your chances of people finding content on a website, if you are using social media to push people there, because the platforms themselves, the algorithms that guide the choice of what appears on the platform, will learn that, this person, has clicked on this content and gone to a website, that means that this, what they clicked on, is of interest to people. So the next time around, I mean, it's obviously more complicated than that, but the next time around, they'll say, oh, we'll highlight that content. So that's the answer to the second part of the question. As to the first part of the question, which was hosting your blog on your website, that's fine, but you still have to do the same thing. Again, unless you know that you've got the audience that you want already checking your website out, then you're going to still have to drive people to it using other social platforms. So as a place to host it, there's no problem that I can see with that. It also perhaps increases your chances of, having keywords that search engines will find. But I don't think it relieves you of the need to tell people what they're going to find and where to find it on your website. I hope that answers the question.
And one more question before we move on. If you have links to your website on social media and vice versa, to social media on your website, does this help? Is this beneficial? It help? Yeah.
It certainly is in having links to your website in your social media presence. Sometimes there's a limit, depending on the platform, on whether you can link to your website on that social platform, although most, I think, do. It may be, I may have something when we get to advertising about, and I can't remember which platform it is now, so we'll get to it, where you have to have a business account in order to be able to put your website in your profile. So what was the first part of the question? Sorry, I forgot.
Oh, vice versa. Does it help to put a link to social media on your website?
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's not going to make a fundamental difference, but to the growth of your following necessarily. But if someone finds your website or that you've pushed them there because you've had a performance or somebody's asked, and they see that you have a Facebook or Instagram or Twitter presence, and they like what content there is on your website, then it's likely that they will check out your social platforms to see whether or not there is anything there that extends their interest that they've developed as a result of your website. And then the things begin to feed each other. So, if, for example, you create a site like a Culture Tutor, and I see that the Culture Tutor has a Twitter presence, then I will, and I enjoy the content on the blog, then I will go to the Twitter presence because I feel like I may get more information, more interesting stuff. A good example, if I could, I've got to stop rambling, I think, but I read Dr. Emily Wilson's translation of Homer's Odyssey, and I really liked the translation, and I liked it. And then I found that she had a YouTube presence where she actually reads her translation of the Odyssey, and in those YouTube videos, she when she gets to be Penelope, she grabs her daughter's tiara and puts it on her head, and I thought, geez, this is an interesting woman. And so I connected on her other social platforms, and I happened to say how much I enjoyed reading her translation, and she liked my comment. So I ended up developing this connection to somebody I've never met, simply because once I saw that she'd done something on YouTube, I saw not only was she a brilliant translator, but she had a great sense of humor. And I thought, great, I want to stay connected. So that's a good example of how things work together on social and blogging, or in this case, writing a book.
Great. I think we're good to continue.
Okay, social media platform advertising. The reason I put this in, and I realize we don't have a lot of time left, but there's a lot of, I think, useful information here, is, as I've said, one of the ways that you can expand your audience, if you like, on social is actually by paying a little bit of money to do so. Social advertising, as this definition says it, is the process of creating and running ads to reach a target audience via social media platforms, messaging apps, etc. So it's obviously this definition is directed more to business, but there it is an easy way to reach people you want to reach. And some people, I think, expressed 2 weeks ago that they wanted to know how to get more people to pay attention to content they already have. Well, you can use advertising. There are some cons, obviously. It can be complicated, but not that hard, not that complicated. The main reason to use social advertising is it can connect you with customers or people that you can't reach through organic content. That is, going back to that expression, if you build it, they will come. That's not true on social. In fact, it's declining. The impact of organic reach, that is content that is just found by somebody like me, for example, on Facebook, only 2 to 8% of the audience on Facebook that you may be connected with actually sees your content, organic content. Paid posts, on the other hand, reach 100 times the audience. So this is think of it like an ad agency when it comes to advertising. You do not need to go through this whole infographic here, but you're doing 3 things fundamentally. You're defining your objectives, you're defining who you want to reach, and you're defining what kind of content you need to create in order to reach them in an advertising campaign. So for example, Facebook ads. Why do they work? They work because primarily, and this is the thing to most keep in mind, is you can reach people who are interested in your work, your product, whatever. The advertising you can target so well on platforms like Facebook and Instagram that you can reach people who would never see your content any other way. Not by spending a whole lot of money, by the way, a few $100s. You can control your budget. You can control how much you spend. You can try out different designs, like that joke there about A/B testing. You can try out different designs. You can schedule your content so that it's pushed to those target audiences at specific times. And you can do what's called conversion tracking. That is, you can see what ad resulted in somebody taking an action. That is, subscribing to your site or whatever. So what works in a Facebook ads? Visuals, relevant content, enticing value proposition, and a clear call to action. I've got 15 minutes, I think, so I will, obviously you can have this presentation, but who can you target? You can target people on the basis of gender, location, interests, age, language, employment, relationship status, that is married, divorced, in a relationship, single, whatever, life events. You can target based on device being used to view the content. So you can say, I only want this ad to appear on mobile devices as opposed to people who access Facebook on a desktop computer. You can determine behavioral targets. People who've liked your page, for example, you can go back to them with the content. You don't have to become their friends. You simply push your content to them and what people like to do on Facebook. You can also build what's called lookalike audiences. That is, you can say to Facebook, this costs a little more. You could say to Facebook, by the way, this is very similar to Instagram, which I get to. You can say, I want a target audience who are similar to the current audience I have. And then you can target your ad to people who look exactly like who you already have, because you know those people that you have as followers are people who like your content. There's also custom audiences, which is it's more costly, but you can target people already known to you by name or by whatever their handle is. So you can go back to people, not just in general terms, which is what the lookalike audience, but very specific terms. So you can target an ad that, well, Scott and I, for example, may be connected to the same person on Facebook. I've expressed an interest in something that somebody's producing. You can target the ad just to me and not to Scott, for example. And the process, you have to understand hashing, which you can look, it's very complicated hashing. So this is an approach used only by people who want a more sophisticated advertising campaign. There are all kinds of Facebook ad types. Page post ads, which are text only. There's photo and video ads. There's ads that you can click on them and go directly to your website, for example. There's multiple image ads, are sometimes called carousel ads, which move from image to image to image. They can be used in particular, for example, if you're having a gallery showing and you want to demonstrate the range of works, you can use a multi-image ad. There are event ads where you can actually invite people to buy a ticket, as is the case here with the Tortuga Festival. There's retargeting ads, which are ads that go back to people who have searched for a particular word. For example, somebody looking for villas available for rent. You can go back to them with a targeted ad about your villa on Santorini that involves adding something called a tracking pixel to the site, but you don't need to worry about that. There's offer ads. You can put ads in different places on Facebook. And how do you do it? It's pretty easy to get started. You go to your Facebook homepage. You click on your homepage, your profile, you scroll down on the list on the left, and you'll see Ads Center, Ads Manager, and you click on that. And I call it Meta Ads Manager because that, of course, as you know, probably the company is now called Meta, and Meta Ads Manager covers both Facebook and Instagram. But you click on that and it says, here we are, create. And away you go. You use the site it leads you through. It says you've got to define objectives first. What are your objectives? Here are the choices. You want to create awareness. You want to build traffic to your Facebook page. You want to up the level of engagement. You want to get leads for sales. You want to promote an app that you've created, etc. You pick one of those. It helps you, it walks you through. Okay, you said you want to do an app install. You want people to install your app. Here's how you do it. Name your campaign, and then you run with it. And Facebook will lead you through step by step how to choose your objective, how to pick your audience, decide which platform you want to run your ad on, Facebook or Instagram, or on Messenger, by the way. Set your budget, pick a format, place your order, then measure and manage your ad. It's nearly exactly the same on Instagram. So I won't walk through how you do it specifically on Instagram because it's the same principle. You just When you get to choose the platform, as I previously mentioned, you could pick Instagram, and then it leads you through how to do it. On Instagram, there are 5 different types of basic types. There's photo ads, which are the cheapest. There's video ads, which can be up to 60 seconds long. There are carousel ads, which are ads that rotate through, great for gallery showings, for example. There's collection ads, which are like the carousel ads, except the images are stacked on top of each other as opposed to rotating around like that. There are shopping ads, which allow you to promote and actually sell products on Instagram with the Shop Now button. And it's the same starting place as with Facebook. So you start with Meta Ad Manager, and at a certain point you get to pick whether it's Facebook or Instagram you want to do your ad on, etc. Again, you're usually offered 5 choices of objective on Instagram, but there are many choices that you can make on Instagram ads. So you can say, I want my ad to reach people near my business. You know, I have a gallery and I'd like the ads to only be targeted at people who are able to come to my business, for example. You pick your audience, etc., age, gender, language, you define those. Again, the Meta Ads Manager will walk you through this process. You set your placement, Instagram, only on mobile, etc., desktop news feed instead of mobile, desktop right column. If you look at your Instagram or Facebook, you'll see, you know, a column. And then you do budget or schedule. And this is where you define your budget. And it's a key feature because you can say, my daily budget is $5. And I want to run my ad continuously starting today for 2 weeks, say. So you know you're going to be spending $70 over the 2 weeks. Of course, depending on how much you spend, the more you spend, the more reach you have. So budgeting, you can set your budget and restrict your investment and see what happens. You set your ad creative, etc. The same thing, and I won't go into Snapchat. Snapchat also, you could start advertising on Snapchat for a minimum of $5. So we're not talking big bucks here. Twitter is very much the same, except in Twitter, you define your performance and you pay only for performance. So if you say you want to increase your followers, you pay only if you increase your followers. If you get no increase, then you don't pay anything. The targeting is the same towards audiences that you define. There are various types, and they depend on how much the type depends. The budget, the cost depends on the type. So a promoted tweet, for example, is far cheaper than a promoted account or a trend takeover. And those, you can find definitions of those fairly easily. How do you start? On Twitter, it's the same thing. You need an account. You need a Twitter account. You go to the Twitter account, and with your account open, you then go to ads.twitter.com, and bam, this is what comes up. You can then follow through on this ads manager type page, your purchase, your budget, your schedule. You provide the ad details, design, the copy, etc., and then you push it out. The really good thing here is, even if you have a Twitter presence and you don't want to advertise, but you'd still like to know, does anyone read the tweets I post? Do what I just said. Open your account on Twitter, go to ads.twitter.com with your account open, and you'll see my, in this case, 28-day summary of the activity that was generated by the tweets that I made. And then finally, here are some resources I thought I would throw in. I've said nothing about TikTok. I did mention it last week, but beginner, there's a link here to an excellent easy to follow article about how to set yourself up on Twitter. There's a great article on starting advertising on Facebook and Instagram. There's an article on the three different types of accounts that you can do on Instagram and what they offer. And then some resources on Instagram ads. So I think we have 4 minutes left according to Scott's schedule. So I'm happy to answer any other questions, and I hope you found that useful, fairly detailed, but I assume that people have a basic understanding of social, and I hope I answered some of your longstanding questions about, in particular, advertising on social platforms to boost your reach.
Thank you, Boyd. Great stuff, as always. There is one more question on advertising that someone has asked, and that is, are Google ads worthwhile?
Well, that's a whole other, that's another session. I mean, Google ads are worthwhile primarily because of what I said about the way in which the Google search engine now is beginning to rank results on the search engine page. If you usually have about 10 results when you search something, just say wedding dresses, you will have 10 results on the Google first page, the search engine results page, the SERP. If 5 of those are ads, then what are the chances that somebody's going to find your wedding dress store unless you advertise in some fashion or other? But seriously, it's a topic in and of itself, how to use Google ads most effectively. But what I would say is, if what you're trying to do in particular is sell something to people, and that's the purpose of your website, then you should learn about Google ads. There are, as you'll find, any of these sites, because advertising is so important to them, there's lots of help available, and it's often written at a level that is understandable and consumable by somebody like me who's aging. So.
Okay, well, as you pointed out, Boyd, and if you would mind stop sharing, we can get back to just us.
Just us.
There we are. There we are. We did have another couple of questions, but I think, again, they would be for another session. And it sounds like we're going to be ready for one. As you said, if this was Social Media 201, it sounds like in the new year, we should be scheduling Social Media 301. So I hope you'll be willing to do that for us.
Yeah, a bachelor's degree has 4 levels usually, so 4 years. So we're in year 3 here. We are approaching year 3.
Okay, well, some of us bailed after 3 years.
Yeah,
and got a general bachelor because we knew we weren't going to be an economist anyway. So,
right.
But that's a whole other story. Boyd, thank you as always. This has been great.
I hope it was useful.
It sure was for me, and I can only imagine the response for everybody. We're getting lots of responses in the chat saying, thank you, great presentation. So I think that says it all. And just got a question, when can we see the recording? As soon as I have time to do it. Hopefully within the next week, we'll have both the beginner one, 101 and 201 up on our website. So thank you again, Boyd.
Okay.
For anybody who wants to join CSARN's social media posts or pages, we are on Facebook. We have 2 pages. One is just a general, it's CSARN announcements, and the other is what we call the CSARN Community Circle, and you can search that, CSARN Community Circle, and on Facebook, and ask to join. And because you're in this group today, you will be admitted immediately. So we thank you again for being part of today. Keep an eye out for our next webinars. As I say, it sounds as if 301 is in the offing in the not too distant future, but we've got some other ones in the works as well. So in the meantime, take care and be well and have a creative day. And we will talk again soon.